The Minnesota Timberwolves finally made the playoffs last season and pushed the Memphis Grizzlies to a very entertaining 6-game series. But they did not settle with that one playoff appearance. They went out and acquired Rudy Gobert while re-signing and adding some additional depth pieces. So with the Timberwolves going all in on Rudy Gobert and this core, what does this team look like and how good could the Timberwolves really be? The Minnesota Timberwolves started things off with the re-signing of forward Taurean Prince, signing him for the next 2 years at $16 million. Prince played some of his best basketball since leaving the Hawks over the second half of the season and will continue to be a valuable 3-and-D wing and was a great depth piece to bring back. The Timberwolves then added to their wing depth by signing slow-mo Kyle Anderson for 2 years at $18 million. And considering he will be their third or fourth forward on the depth chart as a former starter throughout part of his stints in Memphis and San Antonio, the Timberwolves are set to have some of the best wing depth in the NBA. Bryn Forbes was also signed as a depth guard for some shooting on a 1-year deal. At this point, I was very confused as to how the Timberwolves were going to play all of this depth. I was not against them adding all of it, but I struggled to see how everyone would get regular playing time. But soon it would all make sense as to why all of this depth was added. Not long after the Supermax extension of Karl-Anthony Towns for 4 years, worth $224 million, Kant got a new frontcourt partner in what is arguably the biggest trade of the offseason. So it's obvious when just looking at this trade that the Timberwolves gave up a lot of assets in terms of quantity and quality to acquire Rudy Gobert. 2 starters from last year's playoff team, a key bench scorer, their 2022 first-round draft selection, alongside another young prospect in Leandro Balmero, and 4 first-round picks. This is significantly more than myself and many other people expected Utah to get for Rudy Gobert. But okay, fair enough. Rudy Gobert is a very valuable and impactful defender, something we'll talk about in a minute. So what did the Timberwolves truly give up of significance? Well, honestly quite a lot, but a lot of it was replaceable. The most valuable and irreplaceable part of this trade was Patrick Beverley. Patrick Beverley played a significant part in setting up the culture of the team last year and seeing their improved defensive quality and identity. That's not to say that the defensive identity leaves with Patrick Beverley, especially with the acquisition of Rudy Gobert, but there is a difference between an elite defender compared to a good defender and good leader who demands 100% defensive effort from his teammates alongside the type of culture and leadership that Beverley brings. That's now gone. And you cannot replace Patrick Beverley. You cannot just replace those intangibles, and that's what makes him the most valuable loss from a player perspective of this move. However, outside of Patrick Beverley, all of the other players traded can be or have been replaced. Malik Beasley is a solid scoring guard off the bench, although he did struggle at times last year, especially early on in the season. But Jalen Noel is someone who has showed great flashes in limited minutes, and I would expect him to step into this role in the upcoming season and make himself more of a regular household name outside of Timberwolves fans, as many Timberwolves fans know how good he can and potentially will be. But this season is the year I expect the league will take notice as he fills into the role of Malik Beasley. Bryn Forbes was also signed, providing a bit more of a veteran option and a bit more depth at this role, but I would expect that Jalen Noel is the one who gets a significant portion of these minutes. Jared Vanderbilt is one of my favorite role players in the league, and I think he will fit in great in Utah for their need. But ultimately, with McDaniels, Taurean Prince, and Kyle Anderson all on the Timberwolves, they have plenty of wings to get the job done, and it has been proven in last year's playoffs that the lack of three-point shooting from Vando can hinder his playoff impact. The rest of value given up in the trade was future value via draft picks or young prospects, something we will talk about further towards the end of the video. Now in turn, for all of these assets, the Timberwolves got one of the best rim protectors in NBA history. Rudy Gobert instantly makes the Timberwolves one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. But the biggest question that you have to ask when regarding the acquisition of Rudy Gobert is how do 2 all-NBA caliber centers fit together? Let's start with the offensive fit. Offensively, it is fairly straightforward, and neither player will have to adapt significantly in a way that is detrimental to what they do well. Rudy is obviously the much more limited player offensively and is much more of a traditional big man, and in turn will take on most of the traditional center roles in this offense. Rudy isn't going to take any time sitting on the three-point line to allow Cat to post up by himself. Rudy will be the big man manning the paint for the majority of the time. Meanwhile, Karl-Anthony Towns will move to being the full-time power forward, spending even more of his time on the perimeter, which should be a good fit. We all know that Cat is one of the best shooting big men of all time, and allowing him to be fully on the perimeter could open up more three-point shooting opportunities for him. Cat is also good at attacking the rim from the perimeter with physical drives, and Cat can still have some post-up opportunities, with Gobert having some cutting opportunities from those post-ups, something that could benefit the both of them. This fit seems fairly straightforward. Will there be adjustments necessary from Rudy and Cat? Certainly, but that's the case any time a new player is added to a new team. But none of these adjustments will be significant or of significant concern. Where these two elite centers could have some big adjustments to make, specifically adjustments of concern, is on the defensive side of the basketball. Now, I should be clear. I think the adjustments and concerns are mainly for Karl-Anthony Towns, and if anything, Rudy Gobert will have an easier job in Minnesota with more competent defenders around him than he had in Utah. There will be some adjustments for Gobert, certainly, as he enters a different system with different personnel. But at the end of the day, Rudy Gobert will still be a paint and rim protector who plays all of his defensive minutes at the center position. But that means Cat has to be defending power forwards, which is certainly an adjustment. Now, it is important to note that this is not the first time ever that Cat will have some level of minutes defending at the power forward position. Last season, at times, depending on the matchup, Jared Vanderbilt would defend the center of the opposing team, with Cat defending more on the perimeter. But what was not happening was Cat guarding the opposing team's power forward when that forward was an elite wing, something that could be a reality, especially come the playoffs. If the Timberwolves play the Clippers, Cat could be defending Kawhi Leonard. Against the Trailblazers, he could be defending Jeremy Grant. Against the Warriors, Andrew Wiggins. Against the Pelicans, Zion Williamson. These are all realistic potential matchups. They're not some fantasy world that are potential but not likely. These are realistic matchups that Karl-Anthony Towns may have to deal with in a playoff series, the 2023 playoffs. With regards to Karl-Anthony Towns previously with defense in the playoffs, well, it hasn't even been reassuring in his natural position, the center position. Cat has improved as a defender throughout the course of his NBA career, but he is still nowhere near a great defender. Has shown he can have some lapses that lead to some poor decisions, and has shown, depending on his matchup, a lack of lateral quicks, and in turn that has led him to be one of the most foul-prone players in the league. These problems are only going to be exploited more and be even more evident as Cat switches to a defensive role where he will be more often on the perimeter, with defensive roles and positions that he has not been as accustomed to throughout his NBA career, and in a role where his lack of lateral quicks will be even more detrimental. No one can truly shut down players such as Kawhi Leonard or Zion Williamson, but there are many, many better options to defend such elite wings than Karl-Anthony Towns. So as much as the offensive fit might be great, and as much as the Rudy Gobert addition will help the Timberwolves defense as a whole, depending on the matchup, Karl-Anthony Towns guarding wings on the regular is a concern, especially if it leads to foul trouble, which we saw in the 2022 playoffs, which then sees him off the court more, and then affects the offense of the Timberwolves as well. The Minnesota Timberwolves are obviously a much better team after the trade than they were before it. Anyone that says otherwise is just trolling you. However, how much better currently and long-term is worthy of conversation and debate. With Rudy Gobert now anchoring a defense with head coach Chris Finch, Jaden McDaniels being inserted into this defensive starting lineup with his great length and lateral quicks, the continued improvement of Anthony Edwards on the defensive side of the ball, and the improved defense of D'Angelo Russell, there is no reason why this should not be a top 5 defensive team in the league, even if Cat does really struggle defending in his matchups. This should be a team at or near 50 wins every year with an elite defense. But what is their upside in the playoffs, and what is their upside in the future? The key thing to note is that the Timberwolves have fully committed to winning with this group. And this is their win now move. As we talked about earlier when we talked about giving up significant draft picks and future assets that we said we would come back to, we're coming back to it now. And they've mortgaged everything. They've mortgaged all of their draft capital. They've mortgaged all of those future assets that a team has to use in a star trade. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but you have to accept that this is the star move. They don't have that future draft capital anymore to acquire another star down the road. And again, that by itself is not a bad thing, but it adds more pressure and certainly heightens the expectations on this roster, and it puts them in a position where this group has to succeed, and if it doesn't, well, then they've already made their move. If Cat and Gobert don't end up working together defensively, well, this core, now it is what it is, or you have to move one of them. If this team continues to be a first-round exit, well, you lack the draft capital to acquire another star and would have to move one of Gobert, Cat, or Ant to shake things up. I don't think that the Timberwolves will end up being a regular first-round exit, nor do I think that one of their big three will be traded to team struggles or problems with fit. But thanks to such a significant trade, trading away so much draft capital and in turn committing to this core, these are the realities of the situation that have to be considered. Personally, I think the biggest deciding factor in the future success of the Timberwolves is the continued development of Anthony Edwards. Rudy Gobert is great. He's an elite defender, but he has to be a complementary piece on a title contending team. Karl-Anthony Towns is an all-NBA caliber center, but he cannot be the number one option on a title contender. If the Timberwolves are going to contend for a title through the next decade, it will be due to the emergence of Anthony Edwards as an elite player in the NBA, which to me gives the Timberwolves a pretty good chance of becoming an NBA title contender, as I fully believe that Anthony Edwards has the upside to become a top 5 player in the NBA at his peak, and in turn be able to be a number 1 option on a title contender. And given his success and confidence he already has shown in year 2 and in his first playoff appearance, there is very little reason to doubt that future progression from Edwards and the ability to be the main man for a team moving forward. This is already a good team with a great defense that will be tough out in any playoff series. But the future of the Timberwolves will be as bright as the future of rising star Anthony Edwards.